I'm Dr. Kelechi Egwim. Just to give you a little bit of my background, I'm a chemical engineer, so this is really up my alley. It makes the presentation interesting because I can come at it from a lot of different perspectives. I'm going to try not to make it too science heavy. This is a science heavy subject. I'm going to do my best to make it as easily understandable as possible. It's vitally important that we understand. First question one might ask is, what is vitamin D? And some have an idea what it is. And vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. A lot of people think of it as a hormone. They say it acts more like a hormone than a vitamin a lot of times. It is unique because it is the only vitamin that your body can make from the sun. Just by you being outside, your body makes vitamin D. That's unique. And it's designed that way because it's so vital. In research, somebody, Bob Imam handed me an article earlier today where they said vitamin D is the vitamin of the decade. Because so much information is coming out about its relevance and its importance. Just to start out, here's a few sources of vitamin D. Obviously, vitamin D is primarily made from the sun, but there are dietary sources of vitamin D. Foods, mushrooms, fatty fish like salmon, sardines, shrimp, egg yolk. Cereals are fortified with vitamin D, and so are dairy. A lot of black folks are lactose intolerant, so they wouldn't eat dairy anyway. But a lot of the alternative dairy products like soy are also fortified with vitamin D. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on as well. But the primary source of vitamin D, by far, is the sun. You cannot eat. If you spend all your time eating foods with vitamin D, of course we have supplements as well, but even the supplements, you can't consume as much vitamin D as your body can make in an hour with the right amount of sunlight. Your body is designed to make vitamin D. That's how nature intended for us to make vitamin D, and that's why we're built that way. And food is a good source, but it's never going to compensate for what your body can actually make, because your body can make a lot in the right environment. What's the significance? Before we really can appreciate vitamin D, we need to appreciate another compound you've probably heard of called melanin. If you don't understand melanin, you're not going to understand vitamin D. Melanin is an interesting compound that I've, as a chemist, have always been interested in. Because it's older than us. A lot of us think of melanin as a pigmentation in our bodies, and that it is. But before there were human beings, melanin existed in animals that predated human beings. And melanin has been around. It is effective. It is so effective as a sunscreen that our ancestors adapted it as their pigmentation. We could have been green. But melanin is so efficient in what it does that natural selection, that's what we came out with, and it works great. It's key because without protection from ultraviolet rays, you have DNA destruction. You have a vulnerability to your actual DNA, which is what the link is now with cancer in terms of certain illnesses. And we have difficulty with maintaining the right amount of folic acid in your skin. So it's really vital that melanin is present in our bodies. And just to point out, this is a depiction of our skin. This will be the outside of the skin. And these are the lower, this is the lower level of the skin. These are melanocytes. These are the cells in our body that produce melanin. And melanin is filtered out, you say, kind of forms globules, and they kind of move from the interior to the outside. And everybody has these cells. Everybody, even albinos, have melanocytes. What differs from person to person is how much melanin your body produces. It varies from those who produce practically none to those who produce a lot.
Who don't produce none?
Albinos.
Really?
Right. That's their illness, is an ability to produce melanin. And
Would white people be that?
white people are mild forms of albinism. They do have melanin in their skin, they just have very little. But there are some that have none at all. And there's even varying shades of white people. The really lighter skinned ones produce very little, but still some. Albinos produce none. So you see it in their eyes, their hair, a true albino. But white people are a form of albinism. And that's part of their heritage, part of our heritage. This is a book that I remember reading to my children at one point. I thought it was interesting because it talks about different shades of black people. We need to have an understanding that our variations in shades, contrary to what we've been told on the playground, is not because we mixed with white people. You're not lighter skinned because you had Indian in your family. Black people have always come in a variety of shades, including albinos. This is a sister in Benin. You should have a drop of white in her, but she's as light as you can get. And we've always had that variation in skin color. You may have different combinations forming new combinations, but there really is nothing new. We've always had that variation in shade. So that's a misnomer. Black people come in all these shades and always have. Depiction of early migration. We all started out here, all human beings. We know the first people were black, and that bridge has been crossed. Took a while, but so the first human beings, were in Africa. Some say as much as a million, 10 million years prior to even leaving Africa. So we were here for a really long time, and even when we were here, we had albinos in our population. But because of the afflictions of albinism and being in that part of Africa where we came up, their population really couldn't grow to the point where they could form a real prominent group. They were always present, but they would most likely die before they were even old enough to have children. But we will always produce them every once in a while, and that's just part of the variation of our people. But it just so happened because of where we came out of in our migration, they were not going to be a population that would really thrive. So when we migrated from Central Eastern Africa, we went to other parts of the world that did not look like where we started out. This is an image from NASA, an image of how intense the ultraviolet rays are in any part of the world. The darker red, real dark purple, more like a brown, but the real dark red is the region where you have the most levels of ultraviolet rays. And of course, you get close to the poles, you have practically none. The important thing is that where we came from is a place on Earth, by far, with no comparison, where you have the highest concentration of ultraviolet rays. Yeah. And we were adapted to come up here. Our bodies were primed for this part of the world. But as we moved to other parts of the world, as we migrated, just, and this map, I'm going to say something about this map right here. We have to remember that Africans left Africa a long, long time ago, before Africa was Africa. Before Australia got all the way where it was, you could walk across. So the world looked a little different during this initial part of migration. As a matter of fact, evidence is starting to come out that even before South America broke off, you had people who actually crossed. But as we migrated, we found climates that were giving us much less sun and much less direct sunlight and much less ultraviolet radiation. It's important to understand that because if you really want to understand vitamin D, you have to understand the balance in the skin regarding sunlight. Melanin protects the skin from excess ultraviolet rays. Your skin needs ultraviolet rays to produce vitamin D. Without UV rays, UVB in particular, your skin cannot produce vitamin D. So when we came up, we were perfectly adapted to produce the right amount of vitamin D to survive where we were. But as we migrated, the variation in us gave favor to where we were favored before for having darker skin. The lighter skinned people became more and more favored the further away they went from the part of the world where we came from. So as you went further and further, you got into the Caucasus Mountains and so on and so forth, you were less favored as a dark-skinned person. Why were you less favored? Because the melanin in your skin, which was your grace here because it was the perfect balance, now became a detriment for you in these regions because why? You had so much melanin in your skin that you completely blocked out the little sun they got. The sun was not coming in because of the degree of pigmentation that you had, so your skin was not producing the vitamin D because you had too much pigment. And that's how that's how the races of the world came about. And this is when I first said that to somebody, they were like, "What? Racism?" But that's the reality of it. If it wasn't for this one compound, there's a lot of compounds out there. There's millions of compounds in the world, and many vitamins. But this one compound is literally the reason why we have a variety of races. Because if it wasn't for our need to produce vitamin D, our skin would have never. In other words, you would never have favored certain people to survive in certain regions. So you'd have had the same population all throughout the world, would have been dark skin everywhere, right? But because of the varying pigmentation in our skin, some people were favored in different regions. So the varying ability to efficiently produce sufficient vitamin D is the source of the groupings of humans throughout the world on the basis of the varying degrees of pigmentation. This is a map produced in 1978 by some Australians who came upon this in an interesting way, but basically they realized that there was a connection between sunlight, the level of sunlight in the different races. It's something that Charles Darwin, if you know much about Darwin, he refuted this. Because he didn't know what we know now, but he felt there was no connection. He made that statement, but in reality, they proved otherwise. You can actually put the map of this is a map of the indigenous people from different regions, how dark they are. And obviously we know that the folks who were here the darkest and the folks who were here the lightest is exactly proportional to the amount of ultraviolet rays that come to those regions. It's the exact same map, it's just coming from different sources. So they made that correlation and it was clear. I like this map a little bit better.
That's correct.
Right, because this is this is a map that we've been given, all of our lives and coming up in school, making North America bigger than Africa, and making Asia, and distorting Greenland. But in reality, we find that Africa is the second largest continent. It's almost the same size as Eurasia, which is this continent here. We don't use terms like Europe for continents because it's not a large mass surrounded by water, so we know it's not a continent. But it's the second largest if you actually measure the area, but it's clearly much bigger than. Right, it looks largest, but the area is kind of different because of the way Asia kind of spreads out. And if you consider this part of Asia, that makes a difference too. But the point is that, we need to reorient ourselves in terms of our actual proportion. We talk about a lot of African people. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about this. Right. So, unfortunately for us, we're in North America. So, you can look at this map, look at where we're optimized as African people to be, and look at where we are. That's really all you need to see to appreciate that we don't get enough sun. Your optimum serum levels of vitamin D is 18 nanomoles. Serum is basically the amount of vitamin D in your blood. That's what they measure. It doesn't really matter how much vitamin D you take, or when you take it or how you eat it. At the end of the day, you have to have a certain level in your blood. So the serum, the optimum serum level, based on body function and what we know about vitamin D, is 80 nanomoles. Now, for black people, unfortunately, in this country, almost 80% of us are significantly deficient in vitamin D. Almost 80% of us. I mean, the numbers for white people, depending on the population, can range anywhere from 3 to 30. And that's 30 is like in the wintertime, in the most hospitable places. That's the worst for them. But most of us are walking around with near 80, and some numbers are actually higher than that, of us having far less vitamin D to just basic function.
Is that because of lack of supplement or lack of sun exposure?
Well, I'll answer that as we go on, but it's more sun. But I'll give more details on that. First, we want to appreciate why we care about vitamin D. It is a vitamin, and we know vitamins are good, but it's more than that. Like I said, it functions in a lot of ways more like a hormone, and it interacts with so many different organs and cellular cycles. It's almost a catalyst in some instances regarding calcium. The recent research, back in the days, they used to say, well, vitamin D is important because of what? What was the reason they used to tell us vitamin D was important? Anybody? Your bones and your teeth won't be strong unless you have enough vitamin D. And that's true, just not for us. As black people, we have the highest bone density of anybody, even with the most deficient levels of vitamin D. So for us, that's just not true. We may, if you have a deficiency in bone density, for black people, you actually find that the vitamin D levels, it can be as low as you can imagine, and the bone density is still far higher genetically. Our bodies have adapted either to overcome the deficiencies in bone density, or just because we're the first people on earth and God made us stronger. Whatever reason it is, our bones are stronger than everybody, regardless of our level of vitamin D, which is interesting considering how key vitamin D is to building bones.
You saying that black people's bone density is higher than other races?
Anybody else, by far on average, regardless of how much vitamin D this person has, and most of us in this country have very little. Research now linking vitamin D deficiency to heart disease, type 2 diabetes, various cancer. We know that prostate cancer, breast cancer, and colorectal cancer are wreaking havoc in our community. These have now been directly linked to vitamin D levels, serum vitamin D levels. Hypertension, heart attack, stroke death. Heart attack and stroke death is not the degree to which you may have a heart attack or a stroke. Obviously, that's related too because it relates to heart disease, but it's to the degree to which you survive a heart attack or a stroke. Your chances of surviving a heart attack or a stroke is far greater the level of vitamin D you have in your body. And the research is just pouring out, and they're all consistent. The autoimmune deficiency connection of vitamin D has been made. Kidney disease, periodontal disease, we talked about teeth earlier, depression and mood disorders. And this is key. because there are a lot of us, who are suffering from depression, and it could very well, a lot of other factors, that could be involved. The link has been made where it could very well be we're not having enough vitamin D in our body. Multiple sclerosis. We talked about bad bone health earlier, vulnerability to inflammation, which is related to autoimmune deficiency issues. Rheumatoid arthritis, also related to the inflammation. Neuromuscular health, and even the common colds. Your vulnerability to the cold and the flu has now been connected with research to vitamin D, and the latest one that's been connected is Alzheimer's. And I'm gonna, at the end, I'm gonna pass out the research. I'm not just gonna have it come up here and tell you something and say, "Oh, just take my word for it." Don't take my word for it. I mean, we did the research so that they have the information right. We want you to have that research, and the handout that we have has at least the key stuff for the especially the more controversial information, the vital information. So the research has been done, and it's not, segmented to one area of science. It kind of goes the whole gambit. So heart disease, cancer, cerebrovascular disease, stroke, diabetes, these are the leading causes of death for older black people. And these are the very first things on this list. For a long time you had, scientists and doctors scratching their heads trying to figure out why black people are dying from these things more than anybody else. Even when they factor in your education, your economic situation, what part of the world you live in, what part of America you live in. This has been done in other parts of the world. They still cannot figure out what the correlation, but the correlation is there. It's right there. All these things are chronic diseases that you're more likely to be afflicted with if you have vitamin D deficiencies, and we have epidemic vitamin D deficiencies. The death rate from diabetes is nearly twice as high in blacks as in whites in America. Mortality rates for prostate cancer are significantly higher among black men compared to white men, and are inversely related to the availability of ultraviolet radiation. In other words, the availability of vitamin D from sun exposure. This is from the Journal of Nutrition. And just so we don't think that this is necessarily some segment of this information is out there. All these journals are published, by NIST, by CDC, by NIH. This information, they have this information, they put it out there, just not to you and I, right? African Americans have lower vitamin D levels and reduced health outcomes compared to white Americans. Vitamin D status is a major contributor to health care costs in African American veterans compared to white veterans. This was a study recently done with veterans. Low serum levels of vitamin D are associated with increased cardiovascular mortality in a nationally represented U.S. sample. Black-white differences in vitamin D levels may contribute to excess cardiovascular mortality in blacks. Mortality rates from prostate cancer are significantly higher among black men compared to white men, and inversely related to the availability of ultraviolet radiation. In other words, the availability of vitamin D from sun exposure. That's where they are. Improved vitamin D status is essential to chronic disease prevention in blacks. I'm going to repeat that. Improved vitamin D status is essential. Essential means that you can't have it unless you resolve this issue, the chronic disease prevention in blacks. This is in the Journal of Nutrition and Annals of Family Health. These are the Journal of National Medical Association. These are all publications. These are not fringe. These are conventional, government-sponsored, published, put out there. But the information is not being put out to us. How can something this vital be kept under wraps? And this is not all new stuff. Some of this is very, very old. So what are the sources of vitamin D? Somebody asked me that earlier. We know the sun, but there are dietary sources. You've got food like fish, shrimp, egg yolk in particular, cereals are fortified with vitamin D is added to it, dairy is added to it, all types of dairy, and mushrooms. Now, this is an area that I'm not going to get too deep into, but mushrooms are the only non-animal products that have been found to have any levels of vitamin D, any significant levels of vitamin D. And if you're a vegetarian, the only natural source, not fortified, but natural source of vitamin D you're going to get is mushrooms. But there's a slight problem with that. It's a different type of vitamin D. It's vitamin D2. And our body, when we get out in the sun, makes vitamin D3. Our body functions are adapted to function with vitamin D3. Vitamin D2 is a substitute for vitamin D3, but unfortunately it's not exactly designed for our body. And a lot of recent research, especially dealing with prostate and other issues, have actually not shown an improved result from supplementing with vitamin D2 as opposed to vitamin D3. So basically what it's saying is that in a lot of cases vitamin D2 can help our chronic illnesses and our general health, but in some instances, because it's our body functions with it's like a mixture of various shapes. You know, compounds. We think of compounds as just these loosely moving things, but in reality, you know, there are all types of cycles that organs and cells in your body go through, and the shape of the molecule is key. There's enough of a difference between vitamin D2 and 3 that in some instances, in functions in our body, they've actually found that vitamin D2 is not a supplement, a good substitute for vitamin D3. And unfortunately, vitamin D3 is only made by animals, us, and other animals. Go ahead.
Research I've done reveals that dandelion greens are high in vitamin D. I'm not sure about the breakdown between 2 and 3.
D or D?
D.
But
Which D?
Which D? I'm not sure which D.
Right.
Dandelion greens.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if I were to guess, I would probably say it's vitamin D2 because of the relationship to mushrooms and those types of plants. But it's, you know, the research is literally pouring in as we're sitting here in terms of, because it's become evident how important it is. You know, so a lot of stuff is coming out. That may very well be true. But it's important for us to know that distinction, that there is actually a difference in the two, and our body does not respond the same to both of them. As a matter of fact, even when you have functional vitamin D2, our body has a harder time absorbing it. Something called a bioavailability. You know about you take vitamins, take all the vitamins in the world, depending on the vitamins you take, your body may not be able to absorb it, and it'll go through your system and then go right out. Because when it comes down to that compound, your body needs to recognize it and know how to use it. You know, so there's a lot of issues with absorption, with bioavailability, with bioactivity, that makes a difference between the two.
In terms of mushroom, I understand shiitake is supposed to be the
highest concentration, right? And it's interesting because with mushrooms, the mushrooms make their vitamin D from the sun as well. It's the same way we do. It's just they make a different type because they're obviously without mushrooms. But yes, and they've actually shown increased degree levels of vitamin D in mushrooms by just exposing them to more sun. And this is another kind of interesting thing. If you go to the doctor today and say, I want to get a vitamin D deficiency check, and the kits I think cost about $100 to actually do to get yourself, but insurance may cover it. But they do it and they say, okay, your vitamin D is low, which most of us in here I can almost guarantee is low. You know, we're just not in the right place. We can, you know, so we can all go back to Africa and resolve that problem, but until we're prepared to do that, we gotta survive where we are. The vitamin D that your doctor is gonna produce, is gonna prescribe for you, it's not vitamin D3. It's not because he doesn't know the vitamin D3 works better with your body. It's because the pharmaceutical companies have difficulty manufacturing that link that makes vitamin D3 what it is. They can only make vitamin D2. Well, you can make vitamin D3, but it's very expensive. It's cheaper to make vitamin D2. So what are they going to do? Make vitamin D2.
Make the money.
What they'll do is they'll prescribe you with like 10,000 units or 20,000 units of vitamin D2, because if your body needs, if absorption is an issue, obviously you're going to take more of it. So oddly enough, they'll give you vitamin D2 pills or supplements because that's just what's easier to make, and pharmaceuticals are about making money. But it's important to note. So, end of the day, you need to get more sun, because even with all the supplements in the food, your body with optimum sun exposure can produce as much as 20,000 units of vitamin D per hour. Now, the recommended dosage of vitamin D, depending on who you ask, is about 600 to 2,000 units a day. Your body can make 20,000 in an hour. So there's no substitute. There's a reason why the sun is our primary source of vitamin D. It always has been, and it continues to be. And we need to be aware of that when the CDC makes recommendations like avoid the sun between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. daily, the prime sun hours. Wear clothing to protect the skin from exposure to the sun. Wear a hat with a wide brim hat to shade your face. Right. And use sunscreen with SPF of at least 15. These are actually great recommendations.
But they're not for us.
But they're not for us. I mean, I don't fault them for looking out for them, but we have to stop believing they're looking out for us, because the recommendations that is helping them stay relatively cancer-free is killing us. It's not like it's just like, oh well, it's not like we're just not being helped. No, we're being hurt by these recommendations, and they know it. They publish the journals that tell them that it's killing us, but their primary population concern is the white population, and for the white population, these are great recommendations. It's just not for us, and we need to always be aware of that when we get, especially health advice, because they're not necessarily talking to you. It's like you're in a room and two people are talking, and you eavesdropping, you hearing them. They're not talking to you. They're talking to each other, and what we're hearing is killing us. Diseases that are actually killing us. Skin cancer in black people, because the first thing somebody's going to tell you is, what about skin cancer? Well, the reality is that of all the cancers that black people get, skin cancer accounts for about 1 to 2% of all of those cancers. It is rare. To say that it's rare is an understatement. But on top of the fact that it is rare, the skin cancer that we get, acral lentiginous melanoma. That term might ring familiar, well, probably wouldn't ring familiar, but basically, this is the cancer that killed Bob Marley. Bob Marley died of cancer.
Yeah,
right. And he died of skin cancer. But what they don't tell you is the type of skin cancer he got, acral lentiginous melanoma, is the type of skin cancer that black people get, which has absolutely nothing to do with sun exposure. As a matter of fact, this cancer appears in the parts of your body that wouldn't get any sun. The bottom of your feet.
That's where they said he.
Right.
When he got injured from a soccer game.
Right.
Europeans.
Under your fingernails, maybe under your palms, and it's been demonstrated that there is no connection between sunlight and the cancer that we will get, even in the rare cases that we get it. It's already rare. It's a very, very rare case that a black person gets skin cancer. But in the cases that they do, in those rare cases, it's not even a cancer that has anything to do with sunlight. It is not cancer that's propagated by sunlight. It's propagated by the other things that cause cancer. As a matter of fact, as you know, there's research also looking at whether or not it actually the vitamin D level itself may contribute to this cancer. So it's like they're telling you the opposite information. It works for them, but it's literally killing us. We're staying out of the sun because we're afraid of skin cancer. We don't get this cancer that you get from the sun, but they don't tell you that part. What they do tell you is put on sunblock, SPF 15 at least.
Question. I don't know if this happens with other folks. Sometimes my body just craves sunlight, right? And there's a certain form of sunlight. Certain time of the day, it's very radiant, it's very wonderful. I'll just stop the car and find a park and just lay out in the sun.
That's because you're fine too.
You need, huh?
You're fine too.
The body said you need some green. And it's just wonderful.
Bob and Gomer used to say, listen more often to things than to beings.
Right.
If we listened, we would all hear that.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a reason why you're hearing that. If you fine tune, you'll hear that. And you may hear it anyway and not listen, but hopefully you're fine tuned to hear that. But the cure is worse than what's the term? The cure is worse than the illness.
Yeah.
And these are the side effects, possible side effects of the sunscreen they want you to use, even though you don't need it.
We don't need that sunscreen.
Well, you're not. The melanin in your skin is natural sunscreen. Man has never produced sunscreen. In fact, your body and other animals have not produced sunscreens that are more efficient than melanin, let alone man. So you already have all the sunscreen you need. This is for them because they don't have enough. But even that has major side effects, including cancer. And they say it's only a higher cancer risk with children, but if it's a cancer risk in children, it's a risk for you as well. So not only is you not needed in the first place, but it is actually contributing to your chronic illness. So in the day, we need to get more sun. We need to get out in the sun. Like Bible says, sometimes you go out and lay out in the grass. And Richard Pryor said, rub some sun on your face. Yeah. Right? Which is contrary to everything they're going to tell you. Because they're not talking to you. And we need to talk to each other, remind each other that we are children of the sun. Yes. That term means something. A lot of people throw around, but it means something.
You know, talking about getting more sun, I just realized at work during the summer, you see all of us be outside, we take breaks. There's like a congregation, and then you see all the white folks or the Caucasians staying inside the building.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's something, like Mama said, there's something in us telling us to get some sun.
It is.
And, you know, we sometimes don't listen. And we have a world now where you're more likely to work indoors, you know, than outdoors. You know, we're on the computers, you know, we're in the offices, we're not even outside at the times where you get out, you know, you work from 8 to 4 or whatever. By the time when you go into work, you're not getting much sun, and when you get out, you're not getting much sun. So even when you're outside, you're not in the optimum. You're already at a disadvantage because you're in a part of the world that with the sun, the type of sunlight you need is not enough. But even that, you're not getting enough. So it's not really a mystery why black people are suffering from epidemic levels of vitamin D.
I have a question. Given the importance of getting more sun, of getting sun on us at those good times of the day, what do you think about the pollution and the chemtrails hampering that? Does it hamper our connection with getting the vitamin D?
Right. The pollution in the air, which unless you're in a vacuum, even if you're indoors, outdoors, it's the same air, even if it's filtration. But the pollution in the air is not going to affect your absorption of vitamin D. I mean, your skin is going to absorb it from the sun anyway. Well, it's not absorbed from the sun, but it's the ultraviolet rays, the ultraviolet B rays that come through your skin that your skin uses to make vitamin D. So it's not affected by by pollution in the air. Pollution in the air is another issue, which is why the rates of cancer in general are higher. And the key here is not, and I'm not here saying that vitamin D or lack thereof is the reason why black people get cancer, prostate cancer. We're not saying that. What we're saying is that the reason why you're more likely to get it, the reason why there's a higher incidence of these cancers in our population is because we are not getting enough vitamin D. We're not getting enough sun. And your skin can make by far more sun, more vitamin D than you could possibly supplement.
What about a sun-filled room versus being out in the sun? Can you get the same benefit from a sun-filled room?
You can if it's not a room that has a window or a screen that's filtered from ultraviolet D rays.
In
And
most office buildings, they have that.
the modern ones, yeah. I mean, even if you go to Home Depot to buy a window, right? That's a selling point. The selling point is this window is going to block off ultraviolet rays, both A and B. They make a point. It's a selling point. These are the. You can pass these out. Just kind of pass it down. This is not all the research that, and I want to first of all start out by thanking Baba Lumumba for the major significant role he played in the research itself. There's a lot of data there. That first page is really the takeaway. We went through a lot, and we started out dealing with anthropology, and ended up dealing with vitamins and the politics of it, and health, and that kind of summarizes the key points. But this is the key references that garner this information, and I encourage you to follow up. Don't just take my word for it. The information is out there. It's very, in the information age, it's very difficult to hide anything from anybody. So I encourage you to check up on what I'm saying. Don't just take my word for it. I'm simply putting it together, but the information is out there. And also, I'd like to thank Baba Imamu for trusting me to put this thing together. We put together for this particular program, just from the idea that we know that this information is vital to our people and they're not getting it, and nobody has made the connections. These are connections that need to be made, and nobody has made those connections. So I trust him thank you for trusting me to make those connections, and of course I thank you all for listening. And I'll take any further questions you have at this time. I will say one thing. Vitamin D, as I mentioned earlier, is an oil or fat soluble compound. What that means is that it can stay in your body for a long period of time. Basically, it's comparable with your fat cells. So what your body doesn't use, it will store. So you can actually have large stores of vitamin D in your fat cells. If you get a lot of sun for a certain period of time and you're chock full of vitamin D, your body is not going to just excrete the rest of it. It's going to go in your fat cells, and it'll excrete it as your body needs it. So that's also something very important to know about. It's been demonstrated to store for months, and I think that's how it appears to be designed to work. We have different seasons, and some seasons have more sun than others. So you get the right sun at the high seasons, and your vitamin D level is not static. It depends on the weather. It depends on, even as little sun as we get, it varies how much sun we get because there's less sun where we are. So there's a variation. It's low, but it varies nonetheless. But it does store. So even though you get more in the summer, you're gonna have more of it available to use in the winter months, where you're not only are you indoors more because it's cold, but you're also wearing more layers of clothes. You know, so you're really getting
Yeah, that's what I was going to with the layers of clothes. You go to the beach, right? Of course, most of your body's exposed. Legs, chest, your arm. Whereas if you're just walking around in some clothes on, you're not going to absorb as much, right?
Right. And
Clothing, I guess, tends to block.
well, yes, clothing will block for the most part. The largest organ in your body is your skin, right? We learned that. So, but your skin is covered up most of the time. So mostly it's your neck and your head, your arms, so forth, where you actually have, and that's really not a big part of your body. You know, so obviously, you know, I'm not saying walk around naked, you know, but with the clothes.
Have more beach parties, right?
Right. But
It's
there's,
going tomorrow. If in fact it doesn't rain.
right.
Dropping lobster.
Okay, no problem.
Oh, I know. So is there a side effect from taking vitamin D2?
There haven't been demonstrated side effects other than, you know, you do have to allow this compound being kind of moving throughout your body without it being used. We haven't seen any definitive side effects from vitamin D2 as opposed to vitamin D3. It hasn't been shown to be detrimental. It just doesn't function as well until it's doing what it's supposed to do. But it might come out later on that it does have those effects, but right now it hasn't, research hasn't
It's
shown.
go 30 years before you know.
I mean, these compounds can stay in your fat cells for a long time. It may take a lot of time to see, because your body doesn't, it's like, when your body makes something, then you know your body can process it. When your body has something in its natural state, you know, when we were where we came from, right? You know, if your body had that compound, then you know your body can process it. That's what Sister was talking about, fluoride in the water. Fluoride is present in natural water, spring water. You get a borehole, and you dig it down, you pump it up, it's going to have fluoride in it. You know, if you're in a geographically favorable place, but it's natural. Our body naturally makes this type of vitamin D. So our body is designed to use that. It can make a substitute, but it's nothing like the real thing.
And maybe living here, inside of the world, we are not going to get enough by natural sources of the sun, by our exposure.
Unless you can, but you have to make a concerted effort to get a lot more sun. You cannot listen to the advice telling you not to get in the sun.
You saying go out there naked and
There you go.
get
Don't say I tell you to go out there.
Doctor told me to do it.
Right. But definitely, you know, get as much sun as you reasonably can.
No, you have to maximize your surface area coverage.
Right. As often as you can.
But if you're in your own property,
Okay.
I just had a quickie.
Go ahead.
Can you dilute the D3 in liquid? Because
Right.
I've done it and I don't know.
Right.
I'm not sure if they're doing it.
Yeah, you can put it in food.
It's kind of strong.
I mean, I don't find it.
I do 10
we all
drops.
take
Oh,
it.
okay. 10 drops is a lot, but that's still fine. You can put it in food. The recommended to the USDA recommends 600 units, which is really pitiful. But the least I would recommend is at least about 2,000 units.
Yeah.
You can put it in food, you know, as long as you're ingesting it, it doesn't really make a difference how you, in water. It's kind of an oily substance, so I admit it's not going to mix well with water
Oh, then you smooth.
so much. Right. You can put it in anything that.
Greens, that's good.
Would you put the names
already
and why down?
Yeah.
Right, but straight water, you may have a mixing problem. Before I finally close out, I do want you to look at this picture right here.
Yeah. Sunrise.
Who's this? No.
Oh, that's
Imhotep.
I saw.
No. Asar.
Osiris.
Asar. And who's this? Anybody?
Which one?
Where are we?
No, not Ra. Right, Atan. It was an aspect of Ra that separated, but this is essentially the sun and its rays. And anybody tell me what these little symbols right here? Life. So this is our ancient selves. This is the God of the perfect black.
Yeah.
And he is giving homage to the sun rays, which are giving life. Back then, we recognized that life itself comes from the sun.
Come on, bro.
And this is, I'm not going to tell you how old this is, but we've known this for a long time. We need to remember what we used to know. And I thank you all for allowing me to share with you.
Thank you.
Black is natural. Black is original. Black is original. My mama, beauty in disguise. And your black is Africa. Your black is Jamaica. And your black is Caribbean. Your black is America. Your black is Nigeria. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful.
We don't need that sunscreen stuff.
Well, you're not, the melanin in your skin is natural sunscreen. Man has never produced sunscreen. In fact, your body and other animals have not produced sunscreens that are more efficient than melanin, let alone man. So you already have all the sunscreen you need.